Hi there VC, it's Steve Whitty here, Sunday morning, time for another video. Hope everyone's well. I understand that certain parts of the States the weather's been a bit inclement, bit of snow, in fact snowstorms I think, from what I've seen of people posting their pictures on Instagram and Facebook. It's a bit cold over here but not as bad as that, it's just icy more than anything. Cup of tea to keep me going. I've just come back, believe it or not, I've just come back in from the gym. Part of the new regime. I've always gone to the gym, but it's well, for the last few years, but it dropped off towards the end of last year, so I've just got me back into the routine. Habits, good habits are hard to get into. Bad habits are easy to start. Enough prattling on. This video is an appreciation of the band Three. Now, if you follow me on Instagram or on Facebook, you've probably seen that I've been posting the album. I've been playing the albums, and part of it was so I could listen to them before I do this video. So, Three. Why Three? If you watched my video ranking the 20 best British bands, Three came up quite high. I think it was not. They were certainly in the top 5. The reason I like them, it sounded so simple. Great tunes, apparently were great live, and they came and went in such a short time. And what was even more remarkable was how young they were at the time. So Three basically formed. Initially, Paul Kossoff and Simon Kirk were in a band, and I think they were called Blackstone. Whatever. I can't remember the name of the band. Poor research. And they were an R&B band, and they sort of met up with Paul Rogers, who's from Middlesbrough, had come down to London seeking a break, and then crossed paths with Andy Fraser, who was playing with John Mayall's Blues Breakers, or had just got the sack, which is remarkable because he was only 15 at the time. And when I was talking about the age of the band, Kossoff was 17 and Rogers and Kirk were 18. So we're talking a very youthful band. And I think it was Alexis Corner that coined the band's name, Three. I think Chris Black, when they were signed to Island Records, Chris Blackwell sort of toyed with the idea of calling someone like the Heavy Metal Kids, which they didn't like, and Alexis Corner coined the phrase "Free at Last," and they latched onto that and called themselves that. Simple name, something that could be easily remembered. So they started gigging, and eventually in 1968 they released their first album, which is Ton of Sobs, which is produced by Guy Stevens, who you all know produced early Motley Hoople and London Calling by the Clash. This I've seen it said this is just a plodding blues album. It is, because it sort of represents their live act at the time, but there was little bits that were sort of indicated where they were going. Things like Moonshine was a good example. And they did the sort of instrumental Over the Green Hills. So they were a bit more than blues. They had other influences. But yeah, in a way, it's probably very much a blues album. Standout tracks on here are Walk in My Shadow, I'm a Mover, and their version of The Hunter. It's, as albums go, this is not a bad starting point. And yes, as I said, I can see why some people call it just a bog standard blues album, and I understand. Yeah, I understand it. But yeah, it's of its time. I mean, quite a lot of bands were influenced by blues that done albums in pretty much similar vein. most of the songs on that album were actually Paul Rodgers songs, but there were a couple that saw the germ of Paul Rodgers and Andy Fraser forming a very strong songwriting team. Now, different personalities, but it seemed to work. Fraser, as well as being quite a virtuoso bass player, was good at played piano. Rodgers could play an instrument. He could play the bass. He could play guitar. I think when he did his Cut Loose album, I think in 1982, his solo album, 1982, he played all the instruments on it. So Paul Rodgers had a lot of talent as well, and I think that bonded because I think Paul Rodgers stayed at Andy Fraser's family's house initially when the band started getting together. 1969 saw the follow-up, the self-titled second album, 3. This featured was produced by Chris Blackwell, Ireland's owner. He absolutely loved this band, Chris Blackwell. As the cover of the woman. This, fortunately, my copy is pink label. Really pleased with that. And you could see how the band was starting to progress here, and the songwriting partnership of Fraser and Rodgers was coming together. I'll Be Creeping, Songs of Yesterday, Mouthful of Grass, Woman, Broad Daylight, and then probably the closing song, which was much slower, almost sort of folky, Morning Sad Morning, and this what started to make Free stand out a little bit more than the other bands. And at this point, they were getting getting a really good live following, and you know, I think everyone could see that they were ready to make the next step. So they were gigging. The album hit the charts, and then next year it all went. 1970 for the band sort of had its real high peaks and its lows. Let me just have another quick slurp. Coming home from a gig, a really poor gig that they had. They were a bit down, and Andy Fraser and Paul Rodgers was just messing around. Then the phrase came up, All Right Now, came along, and they worked on that song. Little did they know at the time how big a song it was going to be. 1970 saw the release of Fire and Water, and this broke the band big time. There we go. It's a pink label island there. Really, and it's really on the back of the single All Right Now, which was the final track on this album, and it wasn't the band's choice for single. They wanted, I think, Remember, if I remember rightly, as the single. But Chris Blackwell said, nah, we'll shorten All Right Now. That's a commercial song. It's a hit, and lo and behold, it was number 2 in the UK, 1970. I think top 5 in the US. One of the great rock songs. It's one of those songs that sort of sticks out. It's there. Everyone, you know it as soon as it comes on the radio. It's been played. I know it's got the riff, the bass riff, the song, but that doesn't detract for what the whole album does. You've got the title track, Fire and Water, Oh I Wept, Remember, which is quite a commercial song, Heavy Load. The monstrous Mr. Big with Andy Fraser's bass solo is just absolutely amazing. Don't Say You Love Me, and then All Right Now. Broke the band big time. Whether the band were ready for it, it's very difficult to say. And I think on the back of it, they may have rushed into their next album, because later on in 1970, they released Highway. I'm going to say it now, this is my favourite Free album. They'd been listening to a band a lot. Like a lot of groups at that time were influenced by it, listening to music from Big Pink and the band's self-titled album. This sort of shift away from the blues a little bit. A bit more of a West Coasty sound on some of these songs. However, this was rushed out and it flopped. The single, Stealer, flopped. And the problem with that song is it's almost sounded like All Right Now Part 2. The lyric subject was just the same, sort of same thing. However, you've got the title track on here, Be My Friend. Gorgeous song. That closes side one. Ride on Pony, Bodie. And then the monstrous Soon I'll Be Gone. Absolutely brilliant. Really great songs on this album. And this is where the nub of the green, why this failed. It was rushed out. Unless you know the band, there's no indication on the front of the cover. It's free. It's just got the title of the album. What even makes it even worse, there's no really mention, apart from the little bit that says produced by Free, there's no mention on the back either. It's by Free. The pictures on the back, apart from Paul Rodgers, have been called from the cover of Fire and Water. An absolute dog's dinner of packaging, packaging the album. Little wonder it flopped. And for such young men, we're still talking about men that were barely hit 20s, and some were still in their teens. It hit them hard. It hit Kossoff hard. Kossoff was he liked taking tablets, whatever, but his drug use really went he spiraled into drug abuse, drug problems after really the flop of this album. And then relationships between Rodgers and Fraser came to a head, and in the end they split. Not before they released this Free live recorded in Sunderland, I believe. Brave move when you do an opener concert with your best known track, All Right Now, especially if you got a load of the crowd. They've got, you could hear the whatever it's mixed on, screaming girls. Trying it. But you've got versions of Be My Friend, Fire and Water. That was recorded at Croydon. Side 2, the live part was recorded in Sunderland. Get Where I Belong, which closed the album's studio track, was recorded in March 71, just before they split. And then in that session, they recorded My Brother Jake, and lo and behold, became a surprise hit single for them. So there is coverage of them performing it on Top of the Pops. But they'd already decided to pack it in. They was really were relationships had gone. It disintegrated really. So what happened is that Paul Kossoff and Simon Kirke met up with Tetsu Yamamuchi and Rabbit Bundrick and produced an album called, I think it's Kossoff, Kirke, Tetsu, Rabbit, or something like that. Andy Fraser formed a band called Toby, and Paul Rodgers formed a band called Peace, and he recorded some songs. However, Kossoff states mental state. He fell into disrepair really for his drug use, and I think it alarmed other members of the band when they saw him, and it got to a point. In fact, Andy Fraser kidnapped him. He got himself involved with the wrong people. A lot of hangers on. He was this famous pop star, and they get. He had that. Kossoff had that personality that he'd try it, and if he got addicted, he'd try anything. And there were a lot of people who were quite willing to give him pills and whatever. And he was hooked, and it was affecting his playing. So it was agreed, in order to sort of try and help straighten Kossoff out, that the band would get back together again. And the result of that was Free at Last, issued in 1972. This album, there's some good bits and there's some weaker points. I think the good songs, Catch a Train, Sail On, Travelling Man, Guardian of the Universe, absolutely wonderful vocal song by Paul Rodgers. It was produced by Free, and I think also to help, they decided to share the songwriting credits as Free. The band, last owner, wrote all over it. Little Bit of Love was a surprise hit single, top 20 hit single for him. But it didn't really do the trick, particularly relationships between Rodgers and Fraser. And then on top of that, you've got the same issues with Kossoff being unreliable. It wasn't working out with the drug use. I think in his frustration, Andy Fraser just had enough and he walked out of the band. And ineffectively, his career as a top-line rock musician was over by the age of 20. So that was that. However, Paul Rodgers and Simon Cooke soldiered on and recruited Tetsuya Yamaguchi and Rabbit Bondrick. And they recorded the final studio album, Heartbreaker. Paul Kossoff plays some of the tracks on it, but he was again too unreliable. Paul Kossoff was upset that Snuffy Waldron was playing some guitar on the sessions, and because of his unreliability, they recruited Wendell Richardson from Ozzy Bisa to play the guitar. This album, again, it's a mix. But listening to this album, you could see where Bad Company were coming from, which Rodgers and Cooke went on to form afterwards. Wishing Well opens the album. It's top 10 hit single in the UK. It's rock behemoth. It's been covered by so many people. Some other great side one on this is really good actually. Come Together in the Morning, Travelling in Style, and Heartbreaker. However, I mean, this album did really well actually. It was top 50 in the US and top 10 in Britain. Side 2 has a couple of Bundrick tracks, Muddy Water, Common Mortal Man, Easy on My Soul and Seven Angels. Much to the chagrin is that Kossoff ends up getting credits on a couple of tracks, which sort of upset the band, and I think they just decided that's enough's enough and just wound the band down. They wanted to get Kossoff on stage, and he proved to be too unreliable. And that was it, the end of 3. Now, we all know that Rodgers and Cooke formed Bad Company and went on to have huge success. Andy Fraser formed Sharks, and then split that, sort of left that, and then formed the Andy Fraser Band. Became a bit of a songwriter. He had a big hit with Robert Palmer. Recorded Every Kind of People, and it was a successful song for him. And in the end, he sort of drifted in and out of his music career. Personal life changed. He realised after he'd had 2 daughters, he sort of realised he came out as gay. He had HIV. Then he had a rare form. He had cancer, and he eventually died of a heart attack in 2015. Kossoff, he formed Backstreet Crawler. He and he's playing. He was still in demand as a player when he could get up for it. And I think towards the end of his life, he got up on stage with for Bad Company, and they sort of encouraged him to get banned. They were going to tour the UK. Paul Kossoff's band was going to support, bit of support. However, on a flight from New York to LA in 1976, he died on the flight. He got a blood clot that was in his leg that travelled up to his lungs, and it just finished him off. Sad end. And and the one thing about Three that I think makes, sort of like about them, never been an attempt to get back together again. They knew that it's not going to be the same. I think relationships between Fraser and Rogers were beyond repair. I mean, I think Rogers sort of blames Fraser a lot for Kossoff's problems, particularly the kidnapping. Didn't agree with it, so and hence why they never got back together again. Never got back together. I mean, it would have been difficult to actually think about it with another guitarist, to be honest. Now, with a band that's so successful, there are a lot of compilations. There's been plenty of All Right Now has been released and it's been a hit so many times in the UK, and on the back of it, there's always been a new compilation come out. Best one I would say I would go for is The Free Story. This was released in 1973. It's a limited compilation, and my copy is number 8332. Released on Ireland Records. This is not a best of. Wishing Well's not on here, and the version of Heartbreaker is different to what's on the album. It's almost like an early version, but Come Together in the Mornings from Heartbreaker. What is interesting is you do get a couple of tracks from. You get one track from the Rabbits. You get one track. If you get this right. On side 2, you get a track just for the box, which is a song that came from the Kossoff, Kirk, Tetsu and Rabbit album. And 5, the version of Lady is actually recorded by the band Peace, which is Paul Rodgers' band. As I say, I have seen these floating about. I think it's more common in the wild than where it is. Though there's a limited amount. There's also, I've seen the Canadian version in my local shop as well. So that if you're going to choose a free compilation, that's the one to go for. And there, as I said, in 5 years they went. Then that simplicity, the beauty of their music still lives on. So there you go. That's my appreciation of Free. If you're new to the channel, you like what you see, click on the subscribe button. I've had a bit of a rise in subscribers, which is always grateful. Thumbs up, thumbs down. Love the interaction. Feel free to comment. I will get back to you. So, VC, whatever you get up to this Sunday, make sure it's a good one. And keep spinning. Take care of yourselves. Keep spinning. And more importantly, keep on smiling.